Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'd always been healthy. Sure, I got the usual colds and scraped knees, but nothing serious. My parents took me to the same family doctor since I was little, and we never had any problems. I played soccer, did well in school, and lived a normal teenage life. That all changed on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was hanging out with friends after school, just sitting around, eating snacks and doing homework. Suddenly, my throat started feeling weird and tight. Within minutes, I couldn't breathe properly, my face was swelling up, and I broke out in hives all over my body. My friend's mom took one look at me and called an ambulance. The paramedics were amazing. They gave me some kind of shot and got me to the hospital fast. The emergency room doctor explained that I'd gone into anaphylaxis, which is basically when your whole body has a severe allergic reaction that can kill you. They gave me more medication and monitored me for hours to make sure I was okay. Before I left, the emergency room doctor was clear about what I needed to do next. He told me I needed to see my primary care doctor right away to get EpiPen prescriptions and schedule allergy testing. When I asked what would happen if I didn't know what caused the reaction, he explained that was exactly why I needed the testing. But he emphasized that until then, I absolutely needed EpiPens, because this could happen again at any time. My parents and I went to see my regular doctor the next week. I expected her to write the prescription immediately, especially after we explained what happened. Instead, she shook her head and told us she couldn't prescribe EpiPens until we knew exactly what I was allergic to. She said the allergy test would tell us that information. My mom asked about the emergency room doctor's recommendation, but our doctor dismissed it. She said emergency room doctors were too quick to prescribe things and that we needed to do this properly. She scheduled the allergy test for 2 weeks from then. When I asked what would happen if I had another reaction before the test, she told me to just eat normally for the next week before the test. She explained that if we changed my diet now, it might affect the results. I felt uneasy leaving that appointment, but my parents trusted her judgment. She'd been our family doctor for years, and we figured she knew what she was doing. Big mistake. 5 days later, I had another reaction. This one was even worse than the first. I was at home when my throat started closing up again. My dad rushed me back to the emergency room, and the same doctor who'd treated me before was working that night. The emergency doctor asked what happened and whether I'd gotten my EpiPens. When my dad explained that our regular doctor had refused to prescribe them until after the allergy test, the emergency doctor got angry. He called our doctor's decision completely irresponsible and told us I could have died. He gave us strict instructions to ignore whatever she had told us about eating normally. Instead, he told us to cut out everything except basic foods until I got my test results. He gave me a list of safe foods to stick to and made sure I was stable before we went home. I was scared and frustrated. 2 life-threatening reactions in less than 2 weeks, and I still didn't have the medication that could save my life. The allergy test finally came around, and I went back to my doctor's office to get the results. I was hoping she'd finally give me the prescription I desperately needed, but she delivered more bad news. The test had come back negative for everything they checked. Since I didn't react to any of the common allergens, she said she couldn't prescribe EpiPens. I asked her if it mattered that I'd almost died twice, but she insisted the test was definitive. She claimed that if I wasn't allergic to anything on the panel, then I probably wouldn't have another reaction. When my mom asked what would happen if I did have another reaction, our doctor just said we'd deal with it when it happened. My own doctor was basically telling me to wait until I almost died again before she'd help me. My mom was getting upset too, but the doctor wouldn't budge on her decision. We left that office and drove straight to the hospital. I was done taking chances with my life. At the emergency room, I explained everything to the staff. Their reactions were exactly what I expected. The nurse said she couldn't believe that my doctor had refused to give me EpiPens after 2 anaphylactic episodes. She called it insane. The emergency doctor agreed and said what had happened was medical negligence. He was able to give me 2 EpiPens that day, but explained that emergency room staff could only write short-term prescriptions. I'd need a new primary care doctor immediately for ongoing prescriptions. When we got home, I immediately started the process to change doctors, but I was also angry about how I've been treated. In our area, there is a website where patients can review their doctors to help other people choose their health care. I decided to write an honest review about my experience. I wrote exactly what happened, the two reactions, the refusal to prescribe life-saving medication, and how the emergency room staff had to step in. I wasn't trying to be mean or dramatic. I just wanted other people to know what they might be dealing with if they chose this doctor. What happened next surprised everyone, including me. A local journalist had been writing articles about problems in our medical system for months. Somehow, he came across my review and reached out to ask if he could write about my experience. He didn't use my name or my doctor's name in the article, but he wrote about how patients sometimes don't get proper care even in life-threatening situations. The article got shared around social media, and people in our area started looking for the original review I'd written. It wasn't hard to find, and soon my doctor's page was flooded with comments from her current and former patients sharing their own negative experiences. Within a week, my old doctor was put on administrative leave for 6 months while the medical board investigated her practices. During that time, more patients came forward with similar stories about her refusing to prescribe necessary medications or dismissing serious symptoms. When she came back from leave, she'd lost over a third of her patients. Her practice was struggling so badly that she had to take shifts at the hospital just to pay her bills. Some of my friends' parents, who had been her patients, told us she seemed stressed and defensive during appointments, like she was always worried about being complained about again. Meanwhile, I found an amazing new doctor who actually listened to me and took my allergic reactions seriously. Even though the standard allergy test hadn't shown anything, she created a careful reintroduction plan to help figure out what was triggering my reactions. She explained that we would slowly add foods back into my diet one at a time, monitoring for any symptoms. It took months, but we finally figured out that I was allergic to a specific food preservative that wasn't included in the original allergy test. It's in a lot of processed foods, which explained why I'd had reactions even when I thought I was eating things I'd had before. My new doctor prescribed multiple EpiPens and made sure I knew exactly how to use them. My best friend and I have been close since college. We're both 27 now, and he's been dating his girlfriend for about 2 years. She's 29 and honestly one of the sweetest people I know. I work as a marketing coordinator at a small company, and my best friend works in tech. We've always been able to talk about everything, which is why what happened hit me so hard. His girlfriend works long hours as a nurse, so she doesn't get much free time. When she does have time off, she likes to go to the gym to decompress and stay healthy. Last Monday, my best friend called me up, practically bouncing with excitement over the phone. He told me he had finally proposed and that she was definitely surprised. He mentioned that he got it all on video and asked if I wanted to see it. Of course I wanted to see. I rushed over to his apartment after work expecting to watch some romantic proposal video. Maybe something at a restaurant, or during a sunset walk, or even just at home with candles. I was not prepared for what I saw. The video started with him walking into a gym. My stomach immediately dropped. I could hear the sounds of treadmills and weights clanking in the background. Then the camera focused on his girlfriend, who was clearly in the middle of an intense workout on the elliptical machine. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, she was wearing old workout clothes, and she was obviously sweaty from exercising. She looked completely shocked when she noticed him approaching with his phone out. I watched him get down on one knee right there in front of everyone at the gym, pulling out the ring box while she was still on the machine. She asked what he was doing there, and he asked her to marry him. The poor woman looked around at all the people who had stopped their workouts to stare. She was clearly mortified, but what could she say? She nodded and said yes, but I could see in her face that she was not happy. For maybe 2 minutes after she said yes, she managed to look genuinely excited, probably trying to convince herself it was romantic. But for the rest of the video, her smile looked forced and uncomfortable. After we finished watching, I could tell something was bothering him. He explained that she seemed weird about it afterward, and when he asked her what was wrong, she said she wasn't happy with how he proposed. She told him she wished he had proposed somewhere more private and romantic. She said she felt embarrassed that everyone was watching her when she was all sweaty and gross. He said he didn't understand why she was being so difficult about it, especially since he put a lot of thought into surprising her at the gym since she spends so much time there. I tried to choose my words carefully, but I could already see he was getting defensive. I told him I could kind of understand where she was coming from. When he asked what I meant, I explained that he should think about it from her perspective. She was just trying to work out, and suddenly she was the center of attention when she probably felt like she looked her worst. He argued that she should be happy he proposed at all, and that the location shouldn't matter if you really love someone. I took a deep breath, knowing this might not go well. I told him honestly that if a guy proposed to me at the gym, I would hate it too. I explained that I wouldn't want to be proposed to when I'm all sweaty and stinky. I pointed out that it's supposed to be one of the most important moments of your life, and most women want to feel beautiful and special, not like they just ran a marathon. His face completely changed. I could see the anger building. He asked if I was serious and said I was supposed to be his best friend and support him. I told him I was supporting him and that I was trying to help him understand why she might be upset so they could work through it together. He got angrier and said I was being shallow and materialistic just like her. He claimed that a real woman wouldn't care about looking perfect for a proposal and that I was supposed to be happy about the love, not worried about appearance. I tried to explain that it wasn't about being shallow but about feeling respected and considered. I told him that she works hard all week and the gym is probably her stress relief time. Having that interrupted for such a huge moment when she felt vulnerable and unprepared probably made her feel like he didn't think about what would make her happy. He exploded and called me a terrible friend. He said he thought I'd be happy for him, but instead I was taking her side and making him feel like crap about what should be the happiest moment of his life. I tried to reassure him that I was happy for them both. I suggested that maybe he could talk to her about planning something else special to celebrate their engagement, like a nice dinner or a weekend getaway where they both felt relaxed and could really enjoy the moment together. But he was already standing up, clearly done with the conversation. He told me to get out and said he didn't want to hear any more of my shallow opinions. He called me a terrible friend and kicked me out of his apartment. I left feeling terrible. I genuinely was happy about their engagement, but I couldn't pretend that proposing at the gym was a good idea when his girlfriend had already told him she wasn't happy about it. The next day, I got a long text message from him calling me shallow, unsupportive, and a bad friend. He said I was just jealous because I'm single and couldn't handle seeing him happy. He told me not to contact him anymore. 3 days later, I ran into his girlfriend at the grocery store. She looked exhausted. She mentioned that she heard he and I got into a fight about the proposal. I apologized and said I didn't mean to cause problems between them. She told me I didn't cause anything. She explained that he had been telling everyone that I was jealous and shallow because I agreed with her about the gym thing. She said he had been posting on social media about how women today are too materialistic and demanding. When I asked how she was holding up, she admitted that she was starting to wonder if she made a mistake saying yes. She said he had been so angry about the whole thing, and instead of trying to understand why she was upset, he had been calling her ungrateful and shallow too. She even mentioned that he suggested they should break up if she couldn't appreciate his romantic gesture. I felt so bad for her. Here she was, newly engaged, and instead of planning a wedding, she was dealing with her fiancé throwing a tantrum because she dared to have feelings about how he proposed. 2 weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that she had given him back the ring. Apparently, he had started a group chat with his guy friends where he was constantly complaining about how demanding and shallow modern women are. Someone showed her the messages, and she decided she couldn't marry someone who talked about her that way behind her back. Several people from the gym had posted the proposal video on social media without his permission. The comments were brutal. People were calling him out for ambushing his girlfriend during her workout and not reading the room when she was clearly uncomfortable. His little pity party about ungrateful women backfired spectacularly when everyone could see exactly how the proposal went down. He's been radio silent on social media ever since, and I heard he's been complaining to anyone who will listen that his ex-girlfriend broke up with him because I poisoned her mind against him. Because apparently it couldn't possibly be that he handled the whole situation terribly all on his own. I'm a flight attendant for a major airline, and I've been doing this job for 8 years. I thought I'd seen everything: drunk passengers, crime babies, rude businessmen who think they own the plane. But nothing prepared me for what happened on Flight 447 from Chicago to Miami last month. I got into this job because I loved traveling and meeting people. My mom was a flight attendant back in the 80s, and she always told me stories about flying. Of course, things are different now. The job is more about safety than service, and passengers seem angrier than ever. But I still love it most days. That particular Tuesday started normal enough. I was working the morning shift with my usual crew. We had a full flight, which meant it would be busy, but nothing we couldn't handle. I was assigned to the front section of the plane, which includes first class and the first few rows of economy. We were running about 20 minutes behind schedule due to some maintenance issues, which already had people grumpy. During boarding, I noticed this woman in seat 12A who seemed agitated from the start. She was middle-aged and had that look, like the world owed her something. I've learned to spot these types after years on the job, but she kept asking when we'd take off, complaining about the delay, and demanding to speak to the captain. She told me the delay was ridiculous because she had a very important meeting in Miami, and it was completely unacceptable. I politely explained that we were working to resolve the issue as quickly as possible, but she wasn't having it. She demanded to know how much longer it would take, saying I had told her a few minutes, 20 minutes ago. She wanted to speak to my supervisor. I explained that I was the lead flight attendant for this section and asked if there was something specific I could help her with. She just looked at me and went back to her seat. Finally, we got clearance for takeoff. I made the usual announcements about seatbelts, tray tables, and electronic devices. Everyone settled in and we started taxiing to the runway. That's when things went sideways. When we were picking up speed for takeoff, I saw Karen get up from her seat and start walking toward the bathroom. This is a huge safety violation. During takeoff and landing, everyone must be seated with their seatbelts fastened. The plane was accelerating and she was stumbling around the cabin. I told her she needed to return to her seat immediately because we were taking off. She said she needed to use the restroom and couldn't wait. I explained that federal regulations required her to be seated during takeoff and she would have to wait until we were airborne and the captain turned off the seatbelt sign. She completely ignored me and kept walking toward the back of the plane. Other passengers were staring, some looking worried. I had no choice but to follow her and physically guide her back to her seat. I told her this was a safety issue and she was putting herself and other passengers at risk. She yelled at me not to touch her and said she knew her rights. I explained that her rights didn't override federal aviation safety regulations and asked her to return to her seat. The plane was really picking up speed now, and I could feel us starting to lift off. Karen was holding on to seat backs, clearly struggling to keep her balance, but still refusing to sit down. She screamed that she was a paying customer and I couldn't tell her what to do. I told her one more time to return to her seat, and if she didn't comply, this would become a federal matter. That's when she completely lost it. She started screaming at the top of her lungs. She yelled about how I dared to threaten her, that she would have my job and sue the airline. She called me nothing but a waitress in the sky. I remained calm and professional, like I was trained to do, but inside I was getting worried. We were fully airborne now, and she was still standing in the aisle, swaying dangerously. I asked her to lower her voice and return to her seat because she was disturbing other passengers. She screamed that she would lower her voice when I learned how to do my job properly. That's when she did something I never expected. She charged at me like a football player. I barely had time to brace myself before she slammed into me full force. We both went down hard on the cabin floor, her on top of me, screaming and flailing her arms. I hit my head on an armrest going down, and for a second, I saw stars. She was trying to hit me, pulling my hair, and yelling incoherently. I could hear other passengers gasping and shouting. One passenger cried out in shock, asking someone to help me. Another passenger yelled to get Karen off the flight attendant. Thankfully, 3 male passengers immediately jumped up to help. They pulled Karen off me and held her down while she continued screaming and kicking. Karen yelled at them to let her go, claiming that I had assaulted her and she was the victim. One of the male passengers told her that everyone saw what happened and that she had attacked me. Another flight attendant came running from the back galley and helped me to my feet. I was shaken but not seriously hurt, just some bruises and a small cut on my forehead. By this time, the captain had been notified of the situation. His voice came over the intercom. He announced that there had been a security incident on board and asked everyone to remain in their seats while they addressed the situation. Karen was still being restrained by the passengers, screaming about lawsuits and demanding to speak to the pilot. She seemed completely unaware that her behavior was a problem. She kept yelling that this was assault, and everyone was witnessing assault. She said she was calling the police the moment we landed. I told her that assaulting a flight crew member was a federal crime, and the authorities would be waiting when we landed. She insisted she hadn't assaulted anyone, and that I had attacked her. The passengers who witnessed everything started speaking up. One passenger asked if she was serious and pointed out that she had literally tackled me. Another passenger mentioned that he had gotten it all on video if anyone needed proof. Karen went white when she heard that. She finally seemed to realize the gravity of what she'd done. She demanded that the passenger delete the video, claiming he couldn't record her without her permission. The male passenger told her that actually he could record, and they were going to make sure the authorities saw it. For the rest of the flight, Karen sat in her seat with one of the male passengers, keeping an eye on her. She was quiet, but I could see her mind racing, probably trying to figure out how to spin the story in her favor. When we landed in Miami, the plane was met by airport security and FBI agents. When passengers were deplaning, they made Karen wait until everyone else had left. Several passengers gave their contact information to the authorities as witnesses. When they were escorting Karen off the plane in handcuffs, she made one last attempt to play the victim. She claimed this was discrimination and that she was being targeted because she stood up for herself. The FBI agent told her that she had assaulted a federal employee during flight operations, which was a felony. The last thing I heard her say when they led her away was something about calling her lawyer and suing everyone involved. I later learned that she was charged with assault on a flight crew member, interference with flight crew duties, and disorderly conduct on an aircraft. The passenger who recorded everything sent the video to the FBI, and it clearly showed her attacking me unprovoked. My supervisor was incredibly supportive, and the airline backed me completely. They even sent me flowers and gave me a few days off to recover. About 2 months later, Karen had been sentenced to 6 months in federal prison, a hefty fine, and was permanently banned from flying with our airline. She also had to pay for my medical expenses. Our company had just landed this huge contract with a retail chain that wanted to analyze their customer data to improve their marketing strategy. The client was paying top dollar, but they also had an impossible timeline. They wanted preliminary results in 5 days, which meant working around the clock to clean their messy data and run the analysis. I've been pulling 12-hour days for the past week, surviving on coffee and determination. My manager has specifically assigned me to this project because I'm one of the few people in the office who can work with their outdated database system. The client had insisted on keeping their old setup, which meant I had to use specific software that only worked properly on my laptop. So there I was last Tuesday, day 2 of what felt like the longest work week of my life. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in the past 2 nights. My eyes were burning from staring at the screen, but I was finally making real progress. The data was starting to make sense, and I could see the patterns emerging that would save this client millions in wasted marketing spend. I was maybe 2 hours away from finishing the preliminary analysis when this guy from marketing walked over to my desk. Let me give you some context about him first. He's one of those people who thinks marketing is the most important department in any company. He's always making comments about how numbers people don't understand the creative side of business, and he has this habit of interrupting people mid-sentence because he assumes his ideas are more important than whatever you're saying. He approached my desk with that fake, friendly smile he always uses when he wants something. He told me he needed to borrow my laptop for his presentation because his had just died and he had a client meeting in an hour. I apologized but explained that I was right in the middle of something really important. I was on a tight deadline for the retail client project. I suggested he could use one of the conference room computers instead. He complained that those computers didn't have PowerPoint installed the way he needed it. He insisted it would just take 30 minutes. I looked at him like he was crazy. 30 minutes would completely break my concentration, and I'd have to restart several processes that took hours to run. I told him I really couldn't help him. I explained that I've been working on this for 2 days straight and was almost done. I suggested he ask someone else, or see if IT had a backup laptop he could use. That's when his whole demeanor changed. The fake smile disappeared and he got this entitled look on his face. He told me his presentation was for a potential client worth $2 million. He said whatever spreadsheet stuff I was doing could wait. I corrected him, explaining this wasn't spreadsheet stuff. This was the analysis for our biggest client this quarter, and if I didn't finish it today, we could lose the entire contract. Before I could even finish explaining, he started reaching across my desk toward my laptop. He was actually trying to take my computer while I was using it. I asked him what he was doing and told him not to touch my laptop. I pulled the laptop closer to me and he actually had the nerve to grab the other side of it. For a moment, we were literally playing tug-of-war with my work computer. He called me selfish and claimed his meeting was more important than my data entry. I shouted at him to let go of my laptop right now. I told him he couldn't just take someone else's equipment. Our voices were getting louder, and I could see people at nearby desks stopping their work to stare at us. Some of them had their phones out, probably recording the whole thing. The guy from accounting was shaking his head. He yelled that he outranked me and that marketing brought in the revenue that paid my salary. I shouted back that I didn't care what department he was in. This was my assigned workstation and he had no right to take it. That's when things got really heated. He actually tried to close my laptop while I was still holding it, which would have lost hours of unsaved work. I had to physically block him with my arm. I asked if he was insane, pointing out that he could have just deleted everything I've been working on. He snapped back that I should have just let him use it when he asked nicely. By this point, half the office was watching us. Someone must have called security because 2 guards showed up within minutes. They probably thought we were about to start throwing punches. The security guard asked what was going on. I explained that he was trying to take my laptop while I was working on a critical project. The marketing guy claimed he just needed to borrow it for a presentation, and I was being completely uncooperative. The security guard looked back and forth between us like he couldn't believe grown adults were having this argument. He told the marketing guy that he couldn't just take someone else's work equipment. There were other computers available in the building. The marketing guy said this was ridiculous and that he was going to talk to management about this. He walked off angry, leaving me shaking from the adrenaline and embarrassment. Everyone was still staring at me and I just wanted to disappear. I spent the next 10 minutes trying to calm down enough to get back to work, but my concentration was completely shot. About an hour later, my manager came over to my desk. I was sure I was about to get fired for causing a scene. She said she'd heard there was an incident earlier and wanted to hear my side. I explained everything that happened, expecting her to side with him since he'd probably painted me as the unreasonable one. But to my surprise, she was completely supportive. She told me I'd done the right thing. Nobody should be grabbing other people's equipment, especially when you're on a critical deadline. She said she'd already spoken with his supervisor about appropriate workplace behavior. I was relieved, but I should have known that wouldn't be the end of it. This guy doesn't handle rejection well, and he definitely doesn't like being told he was wrong. The next few days were uncomfortable. He started ignoring me completely in group meetings and team chat messages. When I'd ask questions about marketing data I needed for reports, he'd either ignore me or give one-word answers. It was petty and unprofessional, but I figured he'd get over it eventually. Then Wednesday happened. I was working on a weekly report that requires input from all departments, including marketing campaign performance data. This report goes directly to our CEO every Thursday morning, so missing the deadline isn't an option. I'd sent him 3 requests for the marketing numbers, but he never responded. By Wednesday afternoon, I was getting desperate. I messaged him again saying I really needed those campaign numbers for tomorrow's executive report and asked him to please send them over. He finally responded, but only to our manager, not directly to me. He told her he was too busy with client work to compile reports for other departments. He suggested that maybe data analysis should be more organized with their requests. My manager had to personally call him to get the numbers, which didn't arrive until Thursday morning. By then it was too late to do proper analysis, so I had to submit a rushed report that made me look incompetent. That's when I realized this wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. He was actively sabotaging my work because I wouldn't let him take my laptop. I decided it was time to document everything and escalate the situation. I put together a detailed timeline of events, including screenshots of ignored messages and witness statements from co-workers who saw the laptop incident. When I presented it to HR, they were not happy about what they saw. 2 days later, he was called into a meeting with HR and his supervisor. Apparently, they'd been getting complaints about his attitude from other departments too. The laptop incident was just the final straw. Within a week, he was transferred to a different team where he'd have less interaction with other departments. His new role also came with a formal warning about professional conduct. He was furious about the whole thing, but there wasn't much he could do. My manager told me that the CEO has specifically praised my report from the retail client project. Despite all the drama and sabotage attempts, I'd still delivered exactly what the client needed. They ended up signing a long-term contract worth millions. The guy literally tried to steal my laptop because he thought his work was more important than mine. Then when that didn't work, he tried to sabotage my projects out of spite. I was pretty introverted and preferred reading books to socializing. When I finally made a close friend in college, I thought I'd found someone who would stick around for life. We met during our freshman year orientation, bonded over our shared love of terrible reality TV shows, and quickly became inseparable. For 3 years, we did everything together. Study sessions that turned into all-nighters talking about our dreams, weekend trips to nearby towns, celebrating each other's birthdays with elaborate surprise parties. I genuinely believed we had one of those rare friendships that would last decades. She was the person I called when I got my first internship when my grandmother passed away, when I was stressed about graduation. I thought the feeling was mutual. The crack in our friendship started during our senior year. It was something so stupid that I'm almost embarrassed to admit it caused such a massive rift. We were planning a spring break trip together, and I suggested we split the hotel costs evenly. She wanted to book the cheaper room and have me pay more since I had a part-time job, and she didn't. When I said that didn't seem fair, she got defensive and accused me of being selfish with money. The argument escalated quickly. She started bringing up old grievances I didn't even know she had been keeping track of. She complained about how I sometimes took too long to respond to her texts when I was studying. She said I didn't always want to go out when she did. She told me I was apparently too serious all the time. I tried to explain my perspective, but she wasn't interested in listening. That's when she delivered the blow that would stick with me for months. She told me that I was honestly replaceable and that anyone could be a better friend than me. I remember feeling like someone had punched me in the gut, but I wasn't about to let her see how much those words hurt. So I forced out a laugh and shrugged like it didn't matter. I told her okay, if that's how she felt. The conversation ended there. We barely spoke for the rest of senior year, and after graduation, we went our separate ways. But her words haunted me. Late at night, when I was alone in my apartment, I would replay that moment over and over. Was I really that terrible of a friend? Was I actually replaceable? The doubt crept into every new friendship I tried to form. I found myself overanalyzing every interaction, wondering if people were just tolerating me until they found someone better. I threw myself into work after college, partly to distract myself from the loneliness. I got a good job at a marketing firm and slowly started rebuilding my social life. I made new friends, but I never quite opened up to anyone the way I had with her. There was always this voice in the back of my head whispering that they'd eventually realize I was replaceable too. Last month, our mutual friend from college was getting married and threw an engagement party. I almost didn't go because I knew she might be there, but I didn't want to miss celebrating someone I cared about. When I walked in, I spotted her immediately across the room. She looked exactly the same, just with shorter hair and more expensive clothes. For most of the evening, we managed to avoid each other, but when the night went on and people started leaving, we somehow ended up near the dessert table at the same time. The conversation started off surprisingly civil. She greeted me and said I looked good, then asked how I had been. I thanked her and said I'd been doing well, then returned the compliment. We made small talk about our jobs and where we were living now. It felt strange but not hostile. I started to think maybe we could actually have a normal, mature conversation after all these years. Then she started complaining about her life. Apparently, she'd been having friendship drama with someone she'd gotten close to recently. She told me she just didn't understand people sometimes. She explained that she had this friend they hung out with all the time, but then the friend suddenly stopped returning her calls. She said they made plans, and the friend would cancel last minute or just not show up. She went on about how frustrating it was when you invest in someone and they just disappear on you. She kept going, detailing how hurt and confused she was by this person's behavior. She talked about how she'd tried to reach out multiple times but got nothing back. She explained how she felt used and discarded. She insisted that she was such a good friend to this person and was always there when the friend needed someone to talk to. She said she didn't get why the friend would just throw their friendship away like that. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the casual way she was seeking sympathy, or how she seemed to have completely forgotten our own history. Maybe it was the irony of her complaining about being discarded when she'd done the same thing to me. Without really thinking about it, I told her that maybe the friend realized she was replaceable. The change in her expression was instant. Her face went from animated complaining to complete shock. The smile disappeared, her eyes widened, and she stared at me like I'd just slapped her. She said, "Wow, that was so hurtful." I looked at her and raised an eyebrow. I told her exactly. That's what she had told me back then. I watched recognition dawn on her face. She remembered. Her mouth opened and closed a few times like she was trying to find words, but nothing came out at first. She stammered that it was different back then, that we were fighting and she was angry. She claimed she didn't really mean it. I replied that it was funny how it didn't feel different when she said it to me. She told me to look. She was sorry if she hurt my feelings back then, but bringing it up now was just petty. I asked her if she thought it was petty. I pointed out that she had just spent 5 minutes complaining about how awful it feels to be discarded by a friend. I explained that I just gave her the same energy she gave me 3 years ago. She started getting defensive, her voice rising slightly. She said I was being ridiculous and that it was so long ago. She accused me of holding a grudge over something she said when she was upset. I told her I wasn't holding a grudge. I explained that I was just helping her understand how it feels to be on the receiving end of her own words. The conversation was attracting some attention from other party guests, and she seemed to realize this. She looked around nervously. She said I hadn't changed at all and that I was still just petty and vindictive. With that, she grabbed her purse and walked off toward the exit. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.